Hello, 6th graders, and welcome to Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is going to talk about area and perimeter of different shapes. In 8.1, we're going to talk about more specifically about circles and their circumference. So let's start with our first 4 vocab words. Now I know you've heard these before, but we have to make sure, number 1, that you take the time to understand the definition. And if I ask you to explain it, you can't just tell me, for example, a circle is just a round shape. How do you explain a circle? Well, a circle is the set of all points in a plane that are equidistant. I use that word more than the same distance. It's the same thing. Equa, and it'd help if I spelled it correctly. All right, equidistant. So a circle, once again, is a set of all points. All of these points, these are all points that make up this blue circle. All of these points in a plane are equidistant from the point, or from a point. And that point right here is called the center. Now the radius is the distance from the center to all of those points on that circle. So any one of those points, the distance from that to the center is called the radius. The diameter is twice the radius, and it goes all the way across the circle and connects 2 of the points on the circle. But it must cross through the center. Which leads to our first key idea. All this says is that the diameter of a circle is twice the radius. The radius is 1/2 the diameter. If you had to write it as an equation, you could write it as the diameter equals twice the radius, or the radius is half the diameter. Pretty easy. So if I had a diameter of 12, the radius would be 6. If the diameter was, for example, 11, the radius would be half of that, which is 5.5. Now the distance around a circle is called the circumference. So if you go around a circle, the distance around that is called the circumference. The ratio, which is circumference divided by diameter, is the same for every circle, and that is represented by the Greek letter pi, which is represented by the symbol here. The value of pi can be approximated. That's important. It's not exact. Approximated by 3.14 or 22/7. So make note that pi, right here, pi is the ratio of circumference divided by diameter. Now you could also say pi is the ratio of circumference and diameter, but what do we know about the diameter? The diameter is twice the radius. So you could also write it as a ratio that looks like this. I just realized I spelled diameter wrong. There we go. And the circumference of the circle is equal to pi times the diameter, or pi times twice the radius. So in algebra form, here are your 2 equations. You must memorize these. Circumference equals pi d, or circumference equals 2 pi r. And here are the relationships here. There's circumference. Diameter is the green, which is the entire length across the circle that crosses through the center. And the radius is represented in red, which is the distance from the center of the circle to any point around the circle. So in example 1, we're going to find the circumference of circles. So let's do some examples. In example 1a, find the circumference of the flying disc. Use 3.14 for pi. So the first thing I want you to always do, and this is something you'll get really good at, but I always want you to write down the formula, and that's for anything. So the circumference, in this case, I'm going to use 2 pi r, since we're talking about the radius of 5. So c equals 2 times, we're using 3.14, times the radius, which is 5. And we're going to, let's say, round. So it's going to be about, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. This is going to be approximately 31.4 inches. Now in part B, find the circumference of the watch face. Well, the watch face has a diameter of 28, so we could use c equals 2 pi r and plug in 14 for the radius, but I'm going to use pi times d. That's 3.14 multiplied by a diameter of 28, and 28 multiplied by, whoops, notice what I did here. It says not to use 3.14, it says to use 22/7. So let's put 22/7 back in there. And so this is going to give me 88. So we know the circumference is 88 millimeters. So in example 2, we want to estimate the diameter. So here's our problem. The circumference of the roll of caution tape decreases 10.5 inches after a construction worker uses some of the tape. Which is the best estimate of the diameter of the roll after the decrease? So the first thing we have to do, this is where we have to use our applicational skills. Finding circumference, like we just did, is not hard at all. It's pretty easy. You plug in some numbers, you multiply, you're done. But now we have to apply what we know to a much harder problem. So it says the circumference of a roll decreases 10.5 inches after we used it. So we know now, that we have a circumference of 31.4 inches. We're decreasing it by 10.5 inches. That's going to give us a new circumference of 20 9/10 inches. So that's what we're going to plug into our formula. So we have C equals, now in this case, we want to find the diameter, so I'm going to use C equals pi times d. I'm going to plug in the circumference of 20.9 equals 3.14 multiplied by d, which is the diameter. Now remember what I told you in an earlier slide, that the circumference divided by the diameter is equal to pi. Well, I can do the same thing here. I can write the diameter as a ratio. Well, you know how to solve two-step equations? The opposite of multiplying by 3.14 is dividing by 3.14. That is the division property of equality. So 20.9 divided by 3.14, that gives us approximately what? The diameter is going to be approximately 7 inches. Now we could have also just done this. 21 divided by 3. 21 divided by 3 gives us approximately an estimate of 7 inches. In example 3, we're going to talk about a semicircle. Now a semicircle is half of a circle. We want to find the perimeter of the semicircle. Well, we notice that this straight edge here is 6 meters long. The distance around the curved part is going to be half the circumference with a diameter of 6 meters. So the first thing I'm going to do is write the equation C equals pi times d. But wait a minute. Since I only need half, I just need half, I could say that circumference is going to be equal to pi multiplied by d divided by 2. So the circumference is 3.14 multiplied by the diameter, which is 6, divided by 2. That gives me approximately 9.42. Because remember, I'm plugging in 3.14, so this is going to be approximately anyway. So 9.42. But 9.42 is just this piece right there. I still need to add on the 6, which is the perimeter. So I add on the 6. That means my perimeter is going to be approximately 15 42 meters. Your vocab for 8.1 are the following: circle, center, radius, diameter, pi, circumference, and semicircle.